when you think about a role model, who pops into your head? Maybe it's a titan of industry, a star athlete, a Nobel Prize winner. We're always told to look up to the superstars, right? To find our motivation in their incredible achievements. But what if I told you that sometimes that's exactly the wrong advice? Let's get into it.
So it turns out psychology has been digging into this for a while. And way back in 1997, a couple of researchers, Penelope Lockwood and Ziva Kunda, published a paper with a pretty striking finding. They basically said, hey, wait a minute, looking at these amazing people doesn't always lift us up. Sometimes it can be seriously demoralizing. It can actually make us feel worse about where we are in our own journey.
And that leads to a really fascinating question. Why do some role models light a fire under us, while others just make us feel like we'll never, ever measure up? Well, the answer isn't really about the role model. It's about us. And it seems to boil down to three key psychological factors. Let's break them down one by one.
Okay, first up is something we can call the attainability test. And the core idea here is, honestly, it's simple, but it is so powerful. For a role model to actually inspire us, we have to believe, somewhere deep down, that their level of success is, somehow within our reach.
To really see this in action, let's go back to that original 1997 study. They went to a university and looked at accounting students. They gave both first-year students and fourth-year students a newspaper article about this absolute superstar graduating student. I mean, top of the class, just crushing it. Now, for the first years, this was pure inspiration. They were thinking, wow, I've got 4 years, I can totally do that. But for the fourth years, whoa, totally different story. They were about to graduate, their grades are pretty much set. It was just too late to become that superstar.
And here's the data. You can't get much clearer than this. Just look at their self-evaluation scores. The first-year students who saw the superstar, they actually rated themselves higher afterward. They went from an 8.19 to an 890. They felt totally energized. But the fourth-year students, their self-evaluations dropped from an 829 down to a 788. The exact same person had the complete opposite effect, all because of timing and whether that success felt attainable.
So the crucial point here, the big takeaway, is that inspiration isn't just about admiring someone. It absolutely requires a pliable path. If you look at someone and you can't map out a realistic way to get even close to where they are, their success starts to feel less like an invitation and more like a judgment. Attainability is the gatekeeper.
But attainability, that's just part of the puzzle. The second factor is all about our personality, and specifically, how we handle what psychologists call social comparison. It turns out we pretty much fall into one of two camps. We're either identifiers or we're contrasters. And to really get this, we're going to look at a study from 2012 by Brakel and his colleagues that has some really high stakes. They studied former cancer patients and looked at how their quality of life changed when they heard stories about other patients. And this research uncovered this deep personality trait they call social comparison sensitivity, which basically dictates how we react to the good and bad news of other people.
So here's the breakdown. Identifiers are people who are just less sensitive to all this social comparison stuff. When they hear someone's story, their default setting is to kind of absorb it. They look for similarities. They think, hey, that could be me, or I can learn from that. On the flip side, you have contrasters. These folks are highly sensitive. When they hear a story, especially one that feels a little threatening, their first instinct is to find the differences, to push that story away and think, okay, that's them, not me. How am I different?
Now this is where it gets really incredible. Take a look at the graph on the right. This is for patients who are in poor physical health. The identifiers, that's the black bars, when they heard a story about coping, their quality of life scores shot way up to 3. They saw a way forward. But the contrasters, the gray bars, they heard the exact same story, and their quality of life plummeted to just over 1. For them, seeing someone else doing better was absolutely crushing.
That is a profound insight, isn't it? The power of a story isn't just in the words, it's in the wiring of the person listening. The very same information can be a lifeline for one person and an anchor for somebody else. It all comes down to whether your gut reaction is to connect or to contrast.
Okay, on to our third and final piece of this puzzle. This one is all about your mindset, right here, right now. There's this idea called regulatory focus theory, and it says we're all driven by 2 different systems. One that's all about chasing success, and one that's focused on avoiding failure.
So when you're in a promotion focus, your eye is on the prize. You're thinking about your hopes, your dreams, what you can gain. You are literally looking for strategies on how to win. But
When you're in a prevention focus, your main goal is safety and security. You're worried about your duties, your responsibilities. You're not really trying to win, you're just trying not to lose.
So how does this change who inspires us? Well, a 2002 study by Lockwood and her colleagues found a perfect switch. People who were put in that promotion, go-get-it mindset were most motivated by a positive role model, a success story. It gave them a playbook to copy. But people in a prevention mindset, they were most motivated by a negative role model, a story of failure they desperately wanted to avoid. That cautionary tale gave them a clear strategy for how to stay safe.
All right, let's pull all these threads together now. Because finding the right role model clearly isn't about just finding the most famous or successful person on the planet. It's about finding the right person for you for right now.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that inspiration is not one size fits all. It is deeply, deeply personal. It's about asking yourself some key questions. First, is their success actually attainable for me? Can I see a path? Because if not, it could backfire. Second, what's my personality type? Am I an identifier who learns by seeing similarities, or am I a contraster who might feel threatened? And finally, you got to check in with your mindset. Am I chasing a win right now and need a success story, or am I just trying to avoid a loss and need a cautionary tale?
And that brings us to the final and maybe most important thought. The science is pretty clear. The wrong role model can actually be worse than having no role model at all. So take a second and think about the people you look up to. Are they giving you an attainable path? Does their story resonate with your personality? Does it match what you need right now? In short, are they truly genuinely lifting you up?